Have you ever truly thought about your breath? When you inhale, do you consider that each breath carries with it a message from the divine, a subtle invitation to connect with something much greater than yourself? We breathe every moment, yet we rarely pause to recognize the sanctity embedded in this simple act. What if I told you that your breath is not merely a biological necessity, but a sacred practice, a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, between the finite and the infinite? What if the rhythm of your breath could align you with the divine, bringing you closer to the truth that transcends your own existence? In every breath you take, you have the opportunity to reconnect with the divine. This idea is not just a poetic metaphor, but a profound truth at the core of mystical traditions, particularly in Sufism. Ibn Arabi, one of the greatest Sufi mystics and philosophers, saw breath as a direct link to the divine, a spiritual conduit that can guide us toward true alignment with God. His teachings on the power of breath have the potential to transform the mundane into the sacred and offer a pathway to spiritual awakening. Breath is one of the most sacred gifts we receive from God, according to Ibn Arabi. It is the very act that brings us into existence. With every inhale, we take in the breath of God, the divine energy that sustains us and keeps us alive. Breath is not simply a mechanical function. It is a channel through which God's essence flows into our being. It is a divine emanation fade that enters us with every inhale, filling us with life and light. Imagine this. With each breath, you are being nourished by the very essence of existence itself. Ibn Arabi often spoke of how the breath is not just air. It is divine life itself. The fade is not something distant. It is within you. When we breathe consciously, we allow the divine light to enter us more fully. The simple act of breathing transforms from a mere necessity into a sacred ritual. Every inhale brings you into direct contact with the divine presence. But the key is awareness. We must recognize that each breath is a divine invitation, a chance to connect with the source of all life. Ibn Arabi teaches that through the breath, we have the potential to transcend the limitations of the body and the ego, moving closer to God. When we exhale, it is not just air we are releasing. We are letting go of everything that blocks our connection with God, our fears, our attachments, our doubts. Through the act of exhalation, we purify our hearts and minds, making space for the divine light to enter. Exhaling is an act of surrender, of releasing the burdens that weigh on our souls and opening ourselves to divine transformation. Ibn Arabi teaches that the breath is the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Our world is not separate from the spiritual realm. It is simply a reflection of it. The physical body is not an isolated entity, but rather it is in constant interaction with the divine. Breath, then, becomes the thread that connects the two worlds. Through the breath, the material and spiritual realms are unified. This connection between the two realms is vital to understanding Ibn Arabi's teachings on the breath. The breath is the means by which we transcend our physical limitations and access the divine flow of energy. As we breathe, we align ourselves with the higher realities that transcend the limitations of our physical existence. Ibn Arabi teaches that the breath is not only the link between the human and the divine, but also the key to spiritual realization. Through conscious breathing, we can access the deeper dimensions of our being, where divine light resides. Consider this: when you inhale deeply, you are not simply filling your lungs with air, you are inviting the divine to enter you. With each exhalation, you are releasing everything that separates you from the divine presence. Through this conscious exchange of breath, you invite God's presence to fill your heart and release everything that hinders your connection with God. The breath is, in essence, a spiritual exchange between you and the divine. It is through this exchange that you can realign yourself with the source, bringing your body, mind, and spirit into harmony with the divine flow. The practice of conscious breathing, as taught by Ibn Arabi, is an act of dhikr, remembrance of God. The act of remembering God is not limited to verbal recitation or mental focus. It can also be embodied in the very act of breathing. Ibn Arabi teaches that when we breathe consciously, we are engaging in a form of silent worship. Each breath becomes a prayer, a moment of connection with the divine. To breathe consciously is to bring attention to the act of breathing and to recognize the sacred nature of every inhale and exhale. This act of awareness transforms the mundane process of respiration into a deeply spiritual practice. It is through this practice that we come into alignment with God, remembering the divine in every breath. This awareness of breath is not just about physical inhalation and exhalation. It is about realizing that each breath carries the divine light within it. Ibn Arabi teaches that we should breathe as if every inhale is a gift from God, and every exhale is an offering of gratitude. When we breathe consciously, we open ourselves to receive divine guidance and illumination, and we release all that is not in alignment with divine truth. By practicing conscious breathing, we can silence the distractions of the world and enter into a state of deep spiritual focus. In this state, we become more attuned to the presence of the divine, and our hearts become open vessels for the light of God. One of Ibn Arabi's central teachings is that in order to truly connect with the divine, we must purify the soul. The soul is clouded by the nafs, the ego and its desires, attachments, and distractions. In order to experience the divine light fully, we must first shed these layers of ego and desire. This is where the breath comes in. Through conscious breathing, we begin the process of purification. Each inhale brings in divine light, and each exhale releases the impurities of the soul. By breathing with intention, we invite the divine light to fill every part of us, while simultaneously releasing everything that stands in the way of our connection with God. Ibn Arabi's concept of nafas al-soul, the breath of reconciliation, is the means by which we reconcile our souls with the divine. With every breath, we purify our hearts, cleansing ourselves of all that blocks divine love. The act of conscious breathing becomes a spiritual purification, helping us release the ego and align ourselves with the divine presence. This purification process is not just a mental or emotional practice. It is an embodied act that works on the deepest levels of the soul. As we breathe in divine light, we shed the layers of the ego, returning ourselves to a state of purity and alignment with the divine. In Ibn Arabi's teachings, the heart is the center of spiritual knowledge. It is through the heart that we connect with the divine, and it is through the heart that we experience true spiritual realization. The heart is not just a physical organ. It is the spiritual center of the soul, the place where God's light resides. To breathe with the heart is to consciously direct the breath toward this spiritual center. Ibn Arabi teaches that when we breathe with the heart, we are opening ourselves to the direct experience of divine light. The heart becomes the focal point of our spiritual practice, and through it, we connect more deeply with the divine. When you breathe with your heart, you are breathing not just for the body, but for the soul. Every breath becomes a way of drawing closer to God. By focusing on a heart, you allow divine light to fill your being, transforming the body into a vessel for God's presence. The more you breathe consciously with a heart, the more you align yourself with the divine flow of energy, allowing the sacred light to fill every part of your being. One of the most powerful practices in Ibn Arabi's teachings is the use of divine names during breathing. The names of God, or Asma al-Husna, represent the various attributes of the divine. These names are not mere words. They are divine vibrations that can transform the soul. Ibn Arabi teaches that when we recite these names while breathing, we align ourselves with the divine attributes they represent. For example, when we inhale, we might mentally recite Al-Quddus, the Holy, inviting divine purity and light into our being. When we exhale, we might recite Al-Malik, the King, releasing the ego and all attachments to the material world. These names, when repeated in the breath, create a powerful spiritual effect, aligning the soul with the divine presence. By consciously breathing with the divine names, we invite God's attributes into our being, transforming our hearts and minds to reflect the divine qualities. Each breath becomes a powerful spiritual practice, drawing us closer to God's presence. The ultimate goal of Ibn Arabi's teachings is spiritual union with the divine. Through conscious breathing, purification, and remembrance, the soul comes into a state of harmony with God. The breath, which began as a simple act of survival, becomes the very vehicle for spiritual transformation. In the act of breathing consciously, we transcend the limitations of the self and align ourselves with the divine presence. Ibn Arabi's famous words, "I am He, and He is I," express the deepest spiritual realization. The soul and the divine are not separate. They are one. Through the breath, we come to understand that we are not just individuals, but manifestations of the divine presence. The breath becomes the bridge that connects us to God, and in this union, we experience the ultimate peace and joy. Ibn Arabi's teachings on breath offer us a path to spiritual awakening. Through conscious breathing, we align our souls with the divine, purifying ourselves and releasing the barriers that separate us from God. Each breath becomes an act of worship, a moment of remembrance, and a direct connection with the divine. As you breathe, remember, every inhale is a gift from God, every exhale a return to the source. Through this simple act, you can awaken to the divine presence within you, experiencing the light that fills every corner of your being. If this journey into the depths of your soul resonated with you, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Join us as we continue to explore the sacred wisdom of the great mystics and philosophers. Until next time, may your breath be a bridge to the divine.